Tasha, a 15-year-old girl fueled by love and responsibility, has always put her family first, even when facing insurmountable challenges. One day, as she grapples with the weight of her circumstances, she makes a courageous choice that sets off a chain of events she could never have predicted. Walking into the bustling fire station, she clutches a blanket tightly, her heart racing as she approaches the firefighters, who are unaware of the urgency behind her visit. What drives Tasha to seek help from the fire station, and how will her bold decision lead to revelations that could change everything? The tension in the air is palpable as she takes a deep breath, ready to share her burden. Stay tuned to find out what unfolds next. And before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from today. If Tasha's story of courage and resilience resonates with you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. The small town of Millbrook nestled quietly under a blanket of early morning mist. As the sun began to peek over the horizon, casting a warm glow across the sleepy streets, the Millbrook Fire Station stood tall and proud, a beacon of safety in the community. The red brick building, with its gleaming brass pole and neatly parked fire engines, was already bustling with activity as the day's shift began. Captain Sarah Morgan strode through the station's main doors, her boots echoing on the polished concrete floor. At 42, Sarah was a seasoned firefighter with nearly 2 decades of experience under her belt. Her salt and pepper hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her sharp blue eyes scanned the room, taking in every detail as she made her way to the common area. "Morning, team," she called out, her voice firm but friendly. The firefighters gathered around the large wooden table looked up from their coffee mugs and breakfast plates, offering a chorus of greetings. "Morning, Cap," replied Mike Thompson, a burly man with a thick mustache and kind eyes. He'd been with the department almost as long as Sarah and was her right-hand man. "How's it looking out there?" Sarah poured herself a cup of coffee and leaned against the counter. "Quiet so far, but you know how that can change in a heartbeat. Let's stay sharp." The team nodded in agreement. They knew all too well how quickly a peaceful day could turn into chaos. That's why they trusted Sarah's leadership so much. She never let her guard down, always prepared for whatever emergency might come their way. As Sarah sipped her coffee, she observed her team. There was Lisa Chun, the youngest member at 24, eager to prove herself and always first to volunteer for the toughest tasks. Next to her sat Carlos Rodriguez, a former paramedic whose medical knowledge had saved countless lives on scene. And then there was Jack O'Brien, the station's resident jokester, but also one of the most reliable firefighters Sarah had ever worked with. "All right, folks," Sarah said, setting down her mug. "Let's run through today's drill schedule and then dash." She was cut off by the sudden sound of the station's front door banging open. The team's heads whipped around, instantly alert. It wasn't unusual for people to come seeking help, but something about the urgency of the sound put them all on edge. In the doorway stood a young girl, no more than 15 years old. Her dark skin was ashen, and her eyes were wide with fear and something else, desperation. She clutched a blanket tightly to her chest, her knuckles white from the effort. Sarah was the first to move, approaching the girl slowly, her hands held out in a calming gesture. "Hey there, sweetheart," she said softly. "Are you okay? Do you need help?" The girl's eyes darted around the room, taking in the firefighters who had all risen to their feet. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but no words came out. Instead, a small, choked sob escaped her lips. "It's all right," Sarah continued, her voice steady and reassuring. "We're here to help. Can you tell me your name?" The girl shook her head, clutching the blanket even tighter. Sarah's team exchanged worried glances behind her. They'd seen all sorts of emergencies walk through their doors, but something about this felt different. Mike stepped forward, his large frame somehow less intimidating as he crouched down slightly. "Did something happen to your pet?" he asked gently. "Is that what you've got there in the blanket?" It was a reasonable assumption. They'd had plenty of kids rush in with injured dogs or cats over the years. But the girl shook her head again, more violently this time. Sarah took another step closer, close enough now to see the tears welling up in the girl's eyes. "Whatever it is, we can help," she said. "But you've got to let us know what's going on. Can you show us what's in the blanket?" For a long moment, the girl didn't move. The only sound in the station was the soft hum of the fluorescent lights and the girl's ragged breathing. Then slowly, her arms began to loosen their death grip on the bundle. Sarah reached out, her hand steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. As she carefully pulled back a corner of the blanket, she heard gasps from her team behind her. Her own breath caught in her throat as she looked down at what the girl had been carrying. There, nestled in the folds of the ratty blanket, was a newborn baby. Its skin was a dusky blue, tiny chest barely moving with shallow, irregular breaths. The infant was impossibly small, clearly premature, and didn't make a sound. "Oh my God," Sarah breathed, her training kicking in even as her mind reeled from the shock. "Lisa, get the med kit. Carlos, call for an ambulance now." The team sprang into action, years of drills and real-life emergencies guiding their movements. Sarah gently took the baby from the girl's arms, cradling the tiny form close to her body for warmth. "Jack, grab some clean towels and warm them up," she ordered as she moved swiftly to the nearest flat surface, the kitchen table. With practiced ease, she laid the infant down, her hands moving quickly to assess its condition. The girl stood frozen by the door, watching with wide, terrified eyes as the firefighters swarmed around her baby. Sarah glanced up, torn between focusing on the critical patient in front of her and the clearly traumatized teen. "Mike," she called out, "take care of her. Make sure she's okay, and see if you can get any information." Mike nodded, gently guiding the girl to a chair nearby. "Here, sit down," he said softly. "Can you tell me your name? How old is the baby?" The girl sank into the chair, her legs seeming to give out beneath her. I'm Tasha," she whispered, her voice barely audible. He was born this morning. Early. Too early." Meanwhile, Sarah worked feverishly over the infant. The baby's skin was cold to the touch, and its breathing was labored. "Carlos, what's the ETA on that ambulance?" "5 minutes out, Cap," Carlos replied, hanging up the phone. Lisa arrived with the med kit, and Sarah quickly pulled out a tiny oxygen mask. "Okay, little one," she murmured as she gently placed it over the baby's nose and mouth. "Let's get you breathing better." Jack returned with the warm towels, and together they worked to raise the baby's body temperature. Sarah's mind raced through her training, assessing and reassessing the situation moment by moment. "Come on, sweetheart," she urged the infant. "Stay with us. You've got a whole life ahead of you." As if in response, the baby's chest began to rise and fall more steadily. A tiny whimper escaped its lips, the first sound they'd heard from it. Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her, but she knew they weren't out of the woods yet. She looked up at Tasha, who was watching the scene with a mixture of fear and hope on her young face. "Tasha," Sarah said gently, "can you tell us what happened? Where's your mom?" Tasha's lower lip trembled. She doesn't know," she whispered. "Nobody knows. I couldn't." Her words dissolved into quiet sobs. Mike placed a comforting hand on her shoulder, looking at Sarah with concern in his eyes. They'd dealt with plenty of difficult situations before, but a secretly pregnant teenager delivering a premature baby alone? This was new territory. "It's okay, Tasha," Sarah said, her voice firm but kind. "You did the right thing bringing him here. We're going to take good care of both of you." Just then, the wail of sirens cut through the air. Moments later, paramedics burst through the door, their equipment at the ready. Sarah quickly briefed them on the situation as they prepared to transport the baby to the hospital. As they carefully transferred the infant to a waiting incubator, Tasha suddenly stood up. "Wait," she cried out. I need to tell you something." All eyes turned to the young girl. She took a deep, shuddering breath, tears streaming down her face. He's not mine," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's my brother." The room fell silent, the only sound the steady beep of the medical equipment. Sarah felt her heart constrict as the full weight of the situation hit her. This wasn't just about a scared teenage mother. There was a whole other layer to this story that they were only beginning to uncover. "Your brother?" Sarah repeated gently, encouraging Tasha to continue. Tasha nodded, wrapping her arms around herself as if for protection. "My mom, she hid it." The pregnancy. She was so scared and ashamed. When she went into labor this morning, she made me promise not to call anyone. But then the baby came so fast, and he wasn't breathing right, and I didn't know what else to do. Sarah moved to Tasha's side, placing a comforting hand on her back. You did exactly the right thing, Tasha. You saved your brother's life by bringing him here. Tasha looked up at Sarah, her eyes filled with a mixture of relief and lingering fear. What's going to happen now? Will they take him away? Will my mom get in trouble? Sarah exchanged a glance with her team. They all knew that this situation was far more complex than they'd initially thought. There would be questions, investigations, social services involved. But right now, the most important thing was ensuring the health and safety of both the baby and the brave young girl who had saved him. Right now, we're going to focus on getting your brother the medical care he needs, Sarah said firmly. And we're going to make sure you're taken care of too. Everything else, we'll figure out together. Okay. Tasha nodded, some of the tension visibly leaving her body. The wail of sirens pierced the quiet morning as the ambulance sped towards Millbrook General Hospital. Inside, paramedics worked feverishly to stabilize the tiny, premature infant. Captain Sarah Morgan sat beside Tasha, the young girl who had brought the baby to the fire station, her hand resting reassuringly on the teen's shoulder. You're doing great, Tasha, Sarah said softly, her eyes fixed on the bundle of blankets that held the newborn. We're almost there. Tasha nodded silently, her eyes wide and scared. She hadn't taken her gaze off her baby brother since they'd left the fire station. Sarah could feel the girl trembling beneath her touch, a mix of fear and exhaustion evident in every line of her young face. As the ambulance screeched to a halt outside the emergency room entrance, a flurry of activity erupted. The back doors flew open, and a team of doctors and nurses swarmed around the gurney holding the infant. Premature male, approximately 32 weeks gestation, one of the paramedics rattled off as they rushed inside. Respiratory distress, hypothermia. Sarah helped Tasha out of the ambulance, keeping a steadying arm around the girl's waist as they hurried after the medical team. The antiseptic smell of the hospital hit them as they entered, the bright fluorescent lights a stark contrast to the soft morning sunlight outside. They followed the gurney into a treatment room, where doctors and nurses moved with practiced efficiency, attaching monitors and inserting tiny 4 lines. Tasha pressed herself against the wall, her eyes never leaving her brother's small form. A kind-faced nurse approached them. I'm sorry, but you'll need to wait outside while we work on the baby, she said gently. Tasha's head snapped up, panic flashing across her face. No, I can't leave him. He needs me. Sarah stepped in, her voice calm but firm. Tasha, the doctors need space to help your brother. We'll be right outside, okay? They'll tell us everything that's happening. For a moment, it seemed like Tasha might argue, but then her shoulders slumped in defeat. She allowed Sarah to guide her out into the hallway, where they sank into uncomfortable plastic chairs. The minutes ticked by slowly, each one feeling like an eternity. Sarah watched Tasha, noting how the girl's hands twisted nervously in her lap, her eyes fixed on the closed door of the treatment room. Tasha, Sarah said softly, breaking the tense silence. Is there anyone you want me to call? Your mom, maybe? Tasha's head snapped up, fear flashing in her eyes. No, we can't. She doesn't know I brought him here. She'll be so angry, so scared. Sarah's brow furrowed, concern deepening. Tasha, your mom needs to know what's happening. She must be worried sick about both of you. Tears welled up in Tasha's eyes. You don't understand, she whispered. If they find out, if anyone finds out. Okay, Sarah said softly. Can you tell me a little more about what happened? How did you end up delivering the baby yourself? Tasha's lower lip trembled, and for a moment, Sarah thought she might not answer. But then the words began to spill out, as if a dam had broken. Mom, she hid it so well. I didn't even know she was pregnant until a couple of months ago, Tasha said, her voice barely above a whisper. She made me promise not to tell anyone. She was so scared, Captain Morgan. I've never seen her like that before. Sarah nodded encouragingly, her heart aching for this young girl thrust into such an impossible situation. That must have been really hard for you, keeping that secret, she said. Tasha nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. This morning, Mom woke me up. She was in so much pain. I wanted to call an ambulance, but she wouldn't let me. She said they'd take the baby away, that we'd get in trouble. Sarah's brow furrowed. There was clearly more to this story, layers of fear and desperation that had led to this moment. Why was she so afraid of getting help, Tasha? The girl's eyes darted around the hallway, as if checking for eavesdroppers. When she spoke again, her voice was so low that Sarah had to lean in to hear her. She's not supposed to have custody of me, Tasha admitted, the words seeming to physically pain her. There was some trouble a few years back. If the authorities found out about the baby, Sarah's mind raced, fitting pieces of the puzzle together. The hidden pregnancy, the home birth, the terror of seeking help. It all painted a picture of a family in crisis, driven to desperate measures by fear and circumstance. Before Sarah could respond, the door to the treatment room opened. A doctor emerged, his face serious but not grim. Both Sarah and Tasha stood up quickly. "How is he?" Tasha asked, her voice cracking with emotion. The doctor offered a small, reassuring smile. "He's stable for now," he said. "We've got him on oxygen and in an incubator to help regulate his temperature. He's very premature, which means there are a lot of challenges ahead, but he's fighting hard." Relief washed over Tasha's face, and Sarah felt some of the tension leave her own body. But she knew they weren't out of the woods yet, medically or legally. "Can I see him?" Tasha asked eagerly. The doctor nodded. "For a few minutes? Then we'll need to move him to the NICU for more specialized care." As Tasha followed the doctor into the room, Sarah hung back. She pulled out her phone, knowing she needed to update her team and start addressing the complex situation they now found themselves in. She dialed Mike's number, and he picked up on the first ring. "Cap, how's it going there?" Sarah sighed, running a hand through her hair. "The baby's stable for now, but it's touch and go. Mike, we got a complicated situation on our hands. I need you to do some digging, but quietly." She filled Mike in on what Tasha had revealed, emphasizing the need for discretion. "We need to figure out how to help this family without making things worse," she concluded. "Got it, Cap," Mike replied, his voice grim but determined. "I'll see what I can find out and call you back." As Sarah ended the call, she saw Tasha emerging from the treatment room. The girl's eyes were red-rimmed, but there was a glimmer of hope in them now. "He's so small," Tasha said, her voice filled with wonder and fear in equal measure. "But the nurse let me touch his hand. He grabbed my finger, Captain Morgan. It was like he knew who I was." Sarah smiled, placing a comforting hand on Tasha's shoulder. "Babies are stronger than we give them credit for sometimes," she said. "And it sounds like your brother has a pretty amazing big sister looking out for him." Tasha's face fell at that. "I don't feel very amazing," she mumbled. "If I was really a good sister, I would have gotten help sooner. I should have called an ambulance as soon as Mom went into labor." The guilt in the girl's voice was palpable, and Sarah felt her heart ache. She guided Tasha back to the chairs, sitting down beside her. "Tasha, look at me," Sarah said firmly, waiting until the girl met her eyes. "You were put in an impossible situation. You're just a kid yourself, and you were trying to protect your family. The important thing is that when it really counted, you took action. You saved your brother's life by bringing him to us." Tasha sniffled, wiping at her eyes with the back of her hand. "But what's going to happen now?" she asked, fear creeping back into her voice. "When they find out about Mom, about everything, will they take him away? Will they take me away?" The question hung heavy in the air between them. Sarah wished she had an easy answer, a way to reassure this scared young girl that everything would be okay. But the reality was far more complicated. "I don't know exactly what's going to happen," Sarah admitted, deciding that honesty was the best approach. "But I promise you this. I'm going to do everything in my power to help you and your family. We're going to figure this out together, okay?" Tasha nodded, seeming to draw strength from Sarah's words. Just then, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Mike. "Found some info. Call when you can." "Tasha, I need to make a quick call," Sarah said, standing up. "Will you be okay here for a few minutes? The nurses will come get you if there's any change with your brother." After Tasha nodded her assent, Sarah stepped away, finding a quiet corner of the hallway. She dialed Mike's number, her stomach churning with anticipation of what he might have discovered. "What did you find out?" she asked as soon as Mike picked up. Mike's voice was low and serious. "It's not good," capped Tasha's mom, Letitia Williams, lost custody of Tasha about 5 years ago due to drug charges. Tasha was in foster care for a while before being placed with her grandmother. But the grandmother passed away last year, and somehow Letitia regained custody. Looks like there might have been some gaps in the system. Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on her. And the baby's father? No mention of him in any of the records I could access, Mike replied. Could be he's not in the picture, or Letitia's been keeping that information to herself. Sarah's mind raced, trying to process all this new information. Okay, thanks, Mike. Keep this under wraps for now. I need to figure out our next move. As she ended the call, Sarah leaned against the wall, taking a deep breath. The situation was even more precarious than she'd initially thought. Letitia Williams was essentially a fugitive, having regained custody of her daughter through what sounded like a clerical error. And now there was a premature baby in the mix, born in secret and in desperate need of medical care. Sarah knew that by all official protocols, she should be contacting Child Protective Services immediately. The baby's and Tasha's safety had to be the priority. But she couldn't shake the image of Tasha's terrified face. Couldn't forget the desperation that had driven this family to such extremes. There had to be a way to help them that didn't involve immediately tearing the family apart. But what? And how could she justify bending, if not outright breaking, the rules she'd sworn to uphold? As Sarah wrestled with this moral dilemma, she heard a commotion from down the hall. She hurried back to find Tasha standing, her face pale and scared, as a nurse tried to calm her down. What's going on? Sarah asked, stepping between them. The nurse looked flustered. We need to move the baby to the NICU now, and I was explaining to Tasha that we'll need some information for the paperwork. The baby's full name, date of birth, parents' names. Sarah saw panic flash in Tasha's eyes. This was the moment the girl had been dreading, the point where their secrets would start to unravel. Making a split-second decision, Sarah turned to the nurse. I'm Captain Sarah Morgan with the fire department, she said, her voice carrying the authority of her position. This is a sensitive situation involving a minor. I'll handle the paperwork and provide you with the necessary information as soon as possible. For now, please just focus on the baby's medical needs. The nurse hesitated for a moment, then nodded. All right, but we'll need that information soon. Hospital policy dash. I understand, Sarah cut her off firmly. You'll have what you need. Thank you for your cooperation. As the nurse walked away, Tasha looked up at Sarah with a mix of gratitude and lingering fear. Thank you, she whispered. But what are we going to do? We can't hide this forever. Sarah knelt down in front of Tasha, meeting the girl's eyes. You're right, we can't, she said softly. But before we do anything, I need you to be completely honest with me, Tasha. No more secrets. Can you do that? Tasha nodded, her lower lip trembling. Okay, Sarah continued, her voice gentle but firm. I need to know everything. About your mom, about how you ended up back with her, about the baby's father. Everything. Because if I'm going to help you, and I want to help you, Tasha, I need to know what we're dealing with. For a long moment, Tasha was silent, her eyes darting around the hallway as if looking for an escape. But then, with a deep, shuddering breath, she began to speak. It all started last year, when Grandma died, Tasha said, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't have anywhere else to go. The social worker was talking about another foster home, but then Mom showed up. She said she'd gotten clean, that she had a job and an apartment. She begged them to let me come home. Sarah listened intently, her heart aching for the young girl in front of her. She could see the conflict in Tasha's eyes, the love for her mother warring with the weight of the secrets she'd been forced to keep. They said no at first, Tasha continued. But then, I don't know what happened. There was some mix-up with the paperwork, I think. Suddenly, they were saying it was okay for me to go with Mom. I was so happy, Captain Morgan. I thought everything was going to be okay. Sarah nodded encouragingly, sensing there was more to the story. And was it okay, Tasha? Was your mom really clean? Tasha's face crumpled, tears spilling down her cheeks. For a while, she whispered. But then she lost her job, and things got bad again. She started using. Not as bad as before, but I was so scared she'd get caught, that they'd take me away again. The pieces were falling into place now. painting a picture of a family teetering on the edge, driven by desperation and fear. Sarah felt a mix of sympathy and frustration. Sympathy for Tasha and her mother, trapped in a cycle of poverty and addiction, and frustration at a system that had let them slip through the cracks. "And the baby?" Sarah prompted gently. "When did you find out about him?" Tasha wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. "About 4 months ago," she said. "Mom was so scared when she found out. She said we couldn't tell anyone, that they'd take the baby away as soon as he was born. She talked about giving him up, finding someone to take him. But I couldn't let her do that. He's my brother." The fierce protectiveness in Tasha's voice was both heartbreaking and inspiring. This girl, not even old enough to drive, had taken on the responsibility of protecting both her unborn brother and her struggling mother. "I was going to graduate next year," Tasha said, her voice cracking. "I had plans to go to college, to become a nurse. But now, I don't know how I can leave. Mom needs me. The baby needs me. But I'm so scared, Captain Morgan. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to take care of everyone and still have a life of my own." "You've been so brave, Tasha," Sarah said softly. "But you don't have to do this alone anymore. We're going to figure this out, okay?" Tasha looked up at Sarah, hope and fear warring in her eyes. "How?" she asked, her voice small and scared. "They'll take him away. They'll take me away. Mom will go to jail." Sarah took a deep breath. "I won't lie to you, Tasha. There are going to be some hard conversations ahead. Your mom might face some consequences for what's happened. But if she's willing to get help, to really commit to staying clean and taking care of you and your brother, there's a good chance you can stay together as a family." She leaned in, her voice gentle but firm. "But for that to happen, we need to be honest. We need to get your mom the help she needs and make sure you and your brother are safe and healthy. And that starts with making some calls, letting the right people know what's going on." Tasha bit her lip, conflict clear on her face. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know," Sarah said softly. "But remember that bravery you showed today? That's the same strength that's going to get you through this. And I promise you, Tasha, I'll be right here with you every step of the way." For a long moment, Tasha was silent, her eyes fixed on her hands. Then slowly she nodded. "Okay," she said, her voice barely audible. "Okay, let's do it. Let's call my mom." Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her. It was a small step, but an important one. "That's my girl," she said warmly. "We'll call your mom, and then we'll talk to a social worker I know. Someone who can help us navigate this situation and find the best path forward for your family." As Sarah pulled out her phone, Tasha suddenly reached out, grabbing her arm. "Captain Morgan," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Thank you for everything. I don't know what I would have done if—" Sarah smiled, wrapping an arm around Tasha's shoulders. "You're stronger than you know, Tasha. You would have found a way, but I'm glad I could be here to help." As she dialed the number Tasha provided, Sarah felt a sense of cautious hope. The road ahead would be challenging, filled with difficult conversations and hard decisions. But looking at Tasha, seeing the determination in the young girl's eyes, she believed that this family had a fighting chance. The phone rang once, twice, and then a frantic voice answered. "Tasha? Baby, where are you? Are you okay?" Sarah watched as Tasha took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. "Mom," she said, her voice steadier than Sarah had heard it all day. "I'm okay, but we need to talk. There's someone here who wants to help us." As Tasha began to explain the situation to her mother, Sarah felt a swell of pride. This brave young girl, faced with impossible choices, had taken the first step towards a better future, not just for herself, but for her entire family. The conversation wouldn't be easy. The days and weeks ahead would be filled with challenges. But in this moment, watching Tasha find her voice and her strength, Sarah knew that they had reached a turning point. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Sarah's mind raced as she listened to Tasha's side of the conversation with her mother. She could hear the mixture of fear, relief, and anger in the girl's voice as she explained where she was and what had happened. Occasionally, Tasha's eyes would dart to Sarah, seeking reassurance, which Sarah provided with encouraging nods and supportive smiles. As the call went on, Sarah began to formulate a plan. She knew they would need to involve Child Protective Services, But she was determined to approach this in a way that gave Tasha's family the best chance of staying together. She had contacts in the system, social workers who understood the complexities of situations like these and who might be willing to work with the family rather than immediately separating them. Finally, Tasha ended the call, her hand shaking as she lowered the phone. "She's coming," she said, her voice a mix of relief and apprehension. "She was so scared, Captain Morgan. But I think she knows we need help." Sarah squeezed Tasha's shoulder gently. "You did good, Tasha. That was a brave thing you just did." Tasha looked up at her, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "What happens now?" Sarah took a deep breath, considering her words carefully. "Now, we wait for your mom to get here. Then we'll all sit down together and figure out the next steps. I have some ideas, some people we can talk to who might be able to help." She paused, making sure she had Tasha's full attention. "But I want you to understand something, Tasha. No matter what happens next, your bravery today has changed everything. You saved your brother's life. You took the first step in getting your mom the help she needs. And you've shown that you have the strength to face incredibly difficult situations." Tasha ducked her head, a blush creeping across her cheeks. "I was so scared," she admitted. "I still am." "Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared," Sarah said gently. "It means doing what needs to be done even when you are scared. And that's exactly what you did today." She leaned in, her voice soft but intense. "Tasha, I want you to listen to me very carefully. What's happening with your family? It's not your fault. You're a child, and you shouldn't have had to carry this burden alone. But the fact that you did, that you stepped up to protect your brother and help your mom, that shows an incredible strength of character." Tasha looked up, her eyes wide and vulnerable. "But what about college? My plans?" Sarah smiled encouragingly. "Those dreams aren't gone, Tasha. They might look a little different now, or take a different path, but they're still there. And I believe with all my heart that you have the strength to pursue them." She gestured around the hospital. "You wanted to be a nurse, right? Well, look at what you did today. You delivered a baby. You got him the help he needed. You're already showing the kind of quick thinking and compassion that makes a great nurse." A small, tentative smile crossed Tasha's face. "You really think I could still do it?" "I know you can," Sarah said firmly. "It might not be easy. You might have to take some detours along the way. But if this is what you want, you can make it happen. And there are people who will help you, me included." Tasha's smile grew a little stronger. "Thank you, Captain Morgan, for everything." Just then, a commotion at the end of the hall caught their attention. A woman burst through the doors, her eyes wild with fear and desperation. "Tasha," she cried out. "Tasha, baby, where are you?" Tasha stood up, her face a mix of relief and apprehension. "Mom," she called out. "We're over here." As Letitia Williams rushed towards them, Sarah stood as well, positioning herself slightly in front of Tasha. She could see the fear and desperation in the woman's eyes, but also the unmistakable love for her daughter. "Ma'am," Sarah said calmly as Letitia reached them, "I'm Captain Sarah Morgan. I've been with Tasha, making sure she and the baby are taken care of." Letitia's eyes darted between Sarah and Tasha, confusion and fear evident on her face. "The baby, is he?" "He's alive, Mom," Tasha said quickly. "He's in the NICU. He's really small and needs a lot of help, but the doctors say he's fighting." Relief washed over Letitia's face, quickly followed by a fresh wave of fear. But they'll take him away. They'll take both of you away from me." Sarah stepped in, her voice calm but firm. "Ms. Williams, I know you're scared. But right now, the most important thing is making sure your son gets the medical care he needs. And we need to talk about how to move forward in a way that keeps your family together and safe." Letitia's eyes darted between Sarah and Tasha, fear and suspicion warring on her face. "Who are you? Are you with social services?" "No, ma'am," Sarah replied. "I'm a firefighter. Tasha brought the baby to our station this morning, and I've been with her since then. I'm here to help, not to judge or separate your family." Letitia seemed to deflate slightly, the fight going out of her. She sank into a nearby chair, her head in her hands. "I've messed up so bad," she whispered. "I thought I could handle it, thought I could keep it all together. But now—" Tasha moved to her mother's side, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Mom, it's okay. We're going to figure this out. Captain Morgan says there are people who can help us." Sarah knelt down in front of Letitia, her voice gentle but firm. "Ms. Williams, I know you're scared, but hiding and running isn't the answer. It's only going to make things worse. Right now, we have an opportunity to get you and your family the help you need." Letitia looked up, her eyes red-rimmed and desperate. "But they'll take my babies away. I can't lose them. They're all I have." "Not necessarily," Sarah said. "There are programs designed to keep families together while providing support and resources. It won't be easy, and you'll have to commit to making some big changes. But if you're willing to do the work, there's a good chance you can stay together as a family." Hope flickered in Letitia's eyes, quickly replaced by suspicion. "Why are you helping us? Why do you care?" Sarah smiled softly. "Because I've seen the love and strength in this family. Tasha's bravery in bringing her brother here, her determination to protect both of you, that comes from somewhere. And I believe that with the right support, you can all have a better future." Letitia turned to Tasha, her expression a mix of pride and shame. "You did that, baby? You brought him here all by yourself?" Tasha nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I was so scared, Mom, but I knew he needed help. I couldn't let anything happen to him." Letitia pulled her daughter into a tight embrace, her body shaking with silent sobs. "I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry you had to do that. I should have been stronger. I should have." "Ms. Williams," Sarah interjected gently. "What's done is done. What matters now is what we do next. Are you willing to accept help? To do whatever it takes to keep your family together and healthy?" Letitia pulled back from Tasha, wiping her eyes. She looked at Sarah, a glimmer of determination breaking through her fear. "Yes," she said softly. "Yes, I'll do anything. I can't lose them. I want to be better for them." Sarah nodded, a sense of cautious optimism filling her. "Okay then, here's what we're going to do. First, we need to talk to the doctors about your son's condition and what kind of care he's going to need. Then I have a friend in social services who specializes in family reunification. She can help us navigate the system, find programs that can support you." She paused, making sure she had both Letitia and Tasha's full attention. "But I need you both to understand, this isn't going to be easy. There will be tough conversations, hard truths that need to be faced. You'll need to be completely honest about everything that's happened. Can you do that?" Letitia hesitated, fear flashing across her face. But then Tasha took her hand, squeezing it gently. "We can do it, Mom," she said softly. "Together." Letitia took a deep breath, then nodded. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, let's do it." Sarah stood up, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. It was just the first step on a long and difficult road, but it was a step in the right direction. "All right then, let's go see about your son, and then we'll make some calls." As they walked towards the NICU, Sarah couldn't help but marvel at the strength she saw in both Tasha and Letitia. Despite everything they'd been through, despite the mistakes and the fear, there was a resilience there that gave her hope. The NICU was quiet save for the soft beeping of monitors and the gentle whir of machines. Letitia gasped as they approached the incubator holding her tiny son, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh, my baby," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "He's so small." The NICU nurse approached them, her face kind but serious. "Are you the mother?" she asked Letitia. Letitia nodded, unable to take her eyes off the tiny form in the incubator. "Yes, I'm his mom. Is he going to be okay?" The nurse gestured for them to sit in the chairs near the incubator. "Your son is very premature," she explained gently. "He's facing some significant challenges. His lungs aren't fully developed, which is why he needs help breathing. We're also monitoring him for potential infections and other complications common in preemies." Letitia listened intently, her face a mask of worry and guilt. Tasha stood behind her mother's chair, her hand resting supportively on Letitia's shoulder. But the nurse continued, her voice softening. "He's also showing some positive signs. He's responding well to the treatment so far, and he's got a strong heartbeat. Preemies can be surprisingly resilient." Sarah watched as Letitia absorbed this information, seeing the mix of fear and hope on her face. "What happens next?" Letitia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "He'll need to stay in the NICU for quite some time," the nurse explained. "We'll be monitoring him around the clock, adjusting his treatments as needed. It's going to be a long road, but we'll be here every step of the way." She paused, looking at Letitia intently. "One of the most important things you could do for him right now is be here. Skin-to-skin contact, talking to him, letting him know you're here. All of that can make a big difference in his recovery." Letitia nodded eagerly. "I'll be here every day, as much as I can. I promise." The nurse smiled encouragingly. "That's great. Now, we do need to go over some paperwork and get more details about the pregnancy and birth. Is now a good time to do that?" Letitia hesitated, fear flashing across her face. She looked at Sarah, silently pleading for help. Sarah stepped forward. "Actually, there are some complicated circumstances we need to discuss first. Is there somewhere private we could talk?" The nurse's brow furrowed slightly, but she nodded. "Of course. We can use one of the consultation rooms. Let me just get the doctor to join us." As they followed the nurse out of the NICU, Sarah felt the tension radiating from both Letitia and Tasha. She placed a reassuring hand on each of their shoulders. "Remember," she said softly, "honesty is the best path forward here. It might be scary, but it's the only way to ensure you get the help you need." They entered a small, private room with comfortable chairs and a round table. The nurse excused herself to fetch the doctor, leaving the three of them alone for a moment. Letitia turned to Sarah, her eyes wide with fear. "What do I say? How do I explain?" "The truth," Sarah said gently but firmly. "All of it. It won't be easy, but it's necessary. Remember, the goal here is to get help, not punishment." Before Letitia could respond, the door opened and a doctor entered, followed by the nurse. The doctor, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, introduced herself as Dr. Patel. "So," Dr. Patel said as they all sat down, "I understand there are some complicated circumstances surrounding this birth. Can you tell me what happened?" Letitia took a deep breath, her hands shaking slightly. Then, with a glance at Tasha and a nod from Sarah, she began to speak. Her voice trembled at first, but grew stronger as she continued, pouring out the whole story. Her past struggles with addiction, losing custody of Tasha, the paperwork mix-up that allowed her to regain custody, her relapse, the hidden pregnancy, and the desperate home birth. As Letitia spoke, Sarah watched the faces of the doctor and nurse carefully. She saw surprise, concern, and a flash of judgment, quickly replaced by professional compassion. When Letitia finished, the room was silent for a long moment. Dr. Patel leaned forward, her voice gentle but serious. "Thank you for your honesty, Ms. Williams. I know that wasn't easy. Now, I need to be clear. Given the circumstances, we are legally obligated to report this to Child Protective Services." Letitia's face crumpled, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Please," she whispered, "please don't take my babies." Dr. Patel held up a hand. "That's not necessarily what will happen. CPS's primary goal is to keep families together when it's safe to do so. But they will need to investigate and determine the best course of action for both children's safety and well-being." She turned to Sarah. "Captain Morgan, can you tell me your involvement in this situation?" Sarah nodded, explaining how Tasha had brought the baby to the fire station and her role in bringing them to the hospital. She also mentioned her contact in social services who specialized in family reunification. Dr. Patel listened intently, then nodded. "That's helpful information. Ms. Williams, I want you to understand something. The fact that you're here now, that you're being honest about what happened, that's a positive step. It shows you want to do right by your children." She paused, making sure she had Letitia's full attention. "The road ahead won't be easy. You'll need to commit to a treatment program, to therapy, to proving that you can provide a stable and safe environment for your children. But if you're willing to do that work, there's a good chance you can keep your family together." Letitia nodded eagerly, hope shining through her tears. "I'll do anything. I swear, I'll do whatever it takes." Dr. Patel smiled gently. "That's good to hear. Now, here's what's going to happen next. We're going to focus on providing the best possible care for your son. You'll be able to visit him, to be involved in his care as much as possible. Meanwhile, we'll contact CPS and begin the process of assessment and intervention. She turned to Sarah. Captain Morgan, if you could get in touch with your contact in social services, that would be helpful. The more resources and support we can line up, the better. Sarah nodded, already pulling out her phone. I'll call her right away. As the meeting concluded, Sarah could see the mix of fear and determination on both Letitia and Tasha's faces. She knew the road ahead would be challenging, filled with difficult conversations and hard choices. But she also saw the love that bound this family together, the strength that had brought them this far. Over the next few hours, a whirlwind of activity swept through the hospital. Sarah's contact from social services, a compassionate woman named Maria Rodriguez, arrived to begin the assessment process. She spoke at length with Letitia, Tasha, and Sarah, gathering information and outlining potential support programs. The fact that you came forward voluntarily, that you're being proactive about getting help, that's going to work in your favor, Maria explained to Letitia. We're going to put together a comprehensive support plan. It'll involve addiction treatment, parenting classes, regular check-ins, and support for both you and Tasha. Letitia nodded, clinging to every word. And we can stay together? Maria's expression was gentle but cautious. That's our goal. You'll need to demonstrate consistent progress and commitment to the program. There may be a period of supervised visitation or other precautions. But if you stick with it, if you do the work, then yes, we believe families heal best when they're together. As the day wore on, Sarah watched as Letitia and Tasha began to transform. The fear and desperation that had clouded their faces started to give way to cautious hope. They spent hours by the baby's incubator, talking softly to him, reading up on premature infant care, and asking the nurses endless questions. Late in the afternoon, Sarah found Tasha alone in the NICU, her hand resting gently on the incubator as she watched her baby brother sleep. "How are you holding up?" Sarah asked softly, coming to stand beside her. Tasha looked up, a small smile on her tired face. "It's been a lot, but I think we might be okay." Sarah nodded, placing a comforting hand on Tasha's shoulder. "You've been incredibly brave today, Tasha. I hope you know that." Tasha's smile faltered slightly. "I'm still scared," she admitted. What if Mom can't do it? What if it's all too much?" Sarah turned Tasha to face her, her expression serious but kind. "Listen to me, Tasha. I can't promise you that everything will be perfect. Your mom has a long, hard road ahead of her. There will be setbacks and struggles. But what I saw today, the love you have for each other, the determination to make things right, that gives me hope." She paused, making sure she had Tasha's full attention. "And no matter what happens, I want you to remember something. You are strong. You are capable. The bravery and maturity you've shown today prove that. Whatever challenges come your way, I believe in you." Tasha wiped at her eyes, a tentative smile breaking through her tears. "Thank you, Captain Morgan, for everything. I don't know what we would have done without you." Sarah pulled her into a gentle hug. "You're welcome, Tasha. And remember, this isn't goodbye. I'll be checking in on you and your family, helping however I can." As they broke apart, Letitia entered the NICU, her face tired but more peaceful than Sarah had seen it all day. She joined them at the incubator, placing one hand on the clear plastic and the other on Tasha's shoulder. "The nurse says he's getting stronger," Letitia said softly. "She said we could try some kangaroo care tomorrow if he keeps improving." Sarah watched as mother and daughter stood together, their focus entirely on the tiny life before them. In that moment, despite all the challenges that lay ahead, she felt a surge of hope. This family had been through so much, had made mistakes and faced seemingly insurmountable odds. But here they were, together, fighting for a better future. As Sarah prepared to leave, promising to return the next day, she took one last look at the scene in the NICU. Letitia and Tasha sat side by side, their hands linked as they watched over the baby. It was an image of love, of resilience, of a family determined to heal and grow stronger together. Walking out of the hospital into the fading evening light, Sarah felt a mix of exhaustion and satisfaction. The day had been long and emotionally draining, but she knew that something important had happened here. A family had been given a chance at a new beginning. A baby's life had been saved, and a young girl had discovered a strength she didn't know she possessed. As she climbed into her car, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Maria, the social worker. Support plan in place. First step scheduled for tomorrow. Thank you for your help today. Sarah smiled, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. There would be more challenges ahead, more hurdles for Letitia, Tasha, and their family to overcome. But they had taken the first, crucial steps towards a better future. And Sarah knew, with a certainty that warmed her heart, that she would be there to support them every step of the way. The early morning sunlight filtered through the windows of the neonatal intensive care unit, casting a soft glow over the incubators and monitors. Sarah Morgan stepped quietly into the room, her eyes immediately drawn to the familiar figures huddled around one particular incubator. Letitia Williams sat in a rocking chair, her son cradled against her chest, skin to skin. The tiny boy, still connected to various tubes and wires, seemed impossibly small against his mother's frame. But there was a peacefulness to the scene that brought a smile to Sarah's face. Tasha stood nearby, her hand resting gently on her mother's shoulder as she watched her baby brother with a mixture of love and concern. As Sarah approached, Tasha looked up, her face lighting up with recognition. "Captain Morgan," she said softly, careful not to disturb the tranquil atmosphere. "You came back." Sarah nodded, placing a gentle hand on Tasha's back. "Of course I did. I told you I'd be here to support you, didn't I?" Letitia looked up, her eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and lingering anxiety. "Thank you for coming," she whispered. We just finished our first kangaroo care session." Sarah smiled warmly. "That's wonderful. How did it feel?" Letitia's eyes welled with tears. "It was amazing. Terrifying, but amazing. He's so small, but I could feel his little heart beating against me. It made everything feel real." Dr. Patel approached, her clipboard in hand and a cautiously optimistic expression on her face. "Ms. Williams, Tasha," she greeted them, nodding to Sarah as well. "I have some good news. Your son's latest tests are showing improvement. His oxygen levels are stabilizing, and he's gaining weight, albeit slowly." Letitia's grip on her son tightened slightly, her eyes wide with hope. "Does that mean is he going to be okay?" Dr. Patel's smile was gentle but cautious. "We're still taking things day by day, but these are very positive signs. He's a fighter just like his family." As the doctor continued to explain the baby's condition and the next steps in his care, Sarah watched the interplay between Letitia and Tasha. The bond between them seemed to have strengthened, forged anew in the crucible of their shared ordeal. Yet she could still see the weight of their situation in the tension of their shoulders, the worry lines etched on their faces. After Dr. Patel left, Sarah pulled up a chair next to Letitia. "How are you both holding up?" she asked softly. Tasha and Letitia exchanged a glance, a silent communication passing between them. It was Tasha who spoke first, her voice quiet but steady. "It's been hard," she admitted, "but we're doing okay, I think. Mom had her first therapy session yesterday, and we met with the social worker again this morning." Letitia nodded, her eyes never leaving her son's face. "They're setting up a treatment program for me," she said. "Outpatient, so I can still be here for the baby. And Tasha." Sarah could hear the mix of determination and fear in Letitia's voice. "That's great," she said encouragingly. "Remember, this is a marathon, not a sprint. You're taking the right steps, and that's what matters." Just then, a soft knock at the door drew their attention. Maria Rodriguez, the social worker Sarah had contacted, entered the room with a gentle smile. "Good morning," she said softly. "I hope I'm not interrupting." Letitia shook her head, gesturing for Maria to join them. As the social worker pulled up a chair, Sarah could see Tasha tense slightly, her hand tightening on her mother's shoulder. "I wanted to touch base with you about the next steps in our support plan," Maria began, her tone warm but professional. "Letitia, your treatment program is set to begin next week. We've arranged for transportation to and from the sessions, and there will be childcare available for when the baby is ready to come home." Letitia nodded, her expression a mixture of gratitude and apprehension. Thank you, she said softly. I'm nervous, but I'm ready. I want to do this right. Maria smiled encouragingly before turning to Tasha. And Tasha, I've been in touch with your school. We've arranged for a tutor to help you catch up on the work you've missed, and the guidance counselor is aware of your situation. They're prepared to offer extra support to help you stay on track for graduation. Tasha's eyes widened in surprise. Really? I was worried I might have to drop out. Absolutely not, Maria said firmly. Your education is a priority, Tasha. We want to make sure you have every opportunity to pursue your dreams. Sarah watched as Tasha's shoulders relaxed slightly, a glimmer of hope sparking in her eyes. It was a small thing, perhaps, in the face of all they were dealing with, but Sarah knew how important it was. Tasha's dreams of becoming a nurse, of building a future for herself. Those were lifelines, something to hold on to in the storm of uncertainty they were navigating. As Maria continued to outline the support plan, Sarah found herself marveling at the resilience of this family. Just days ago, they had been trapped in a web of secrecy and fear, driven to desperate measures by their circumstances. Now here they were, taking the first tentative steps towards healing and rebuilding. It wouldn't be easy. Sarah had no illusions about the challenges that lay ahead. Letitia's road to recovery would be long and fraught with potential setbacks. Tasha would have to balance the demands of school with her roles as daughter and sister, navigating a level of responsibility far beyond her years. And the tiny boy in the incubator, still fighting for every breath, faced an uncertain future. But as Sarah watched Letitia gently stroke her son's cheek, saw the determined set of Tasha's jaw as she listened to Maria's plans, she felt a surge of hope. This family had already overcome so much. With the right support, with the love and determination she saw before her, Sarah believed they had a real chance at a brighter future. As the days turned into weeks, Sarah found herself returning to the hospital regularly, watching as the Williams family slowly began to find their footing in their new reality. The baby, whom Letitia had named Jamal, continued to grow stronger. There were setbacks, a respiratory infection that left everyone on edge for days, moments when his oxygen levels would suddenly drop, but he fought through each challenge with a tenacity that amazed the NICU staff. Letitia threw herself into her treatment program with a determination that both heartened and worried Sarah. She could see the toll it was taking on the woman, the emotional exhaustion after therapy sessions, the physical strain of balancing treatment with long hours at the hospital. But she could also see the growing strength in Letitia's eyes, the way she held herself a little straighter with each passing day. One afternoon, about a month after Jamal's birth, Sarah arrived at the hospital to find Letitia alone in the NICU, gently rocking Jamal in her arms. The boy, while still small for his age, had grown significantly. His skin, once paper-thin and fragile, had taken on a healthier hue, and his dark eyes seemed to track movement with growing awareness. "Where's Tasha?" Sarah asked softly as she approached. Letitia looked up, a mixture of pride and melancholy in her smile. "At school," she said. "She had a big test today. I told her I'd be okay here on my own." Sarah nodded, pulling up a chair beside them. "That's great that she's keeping up with her studies. How's she doing?" Letitia's smile grew a little stronger. "She's amazing," she said, her voice filled with pride. "I don't know how she does it all. She's at the top of her class, even with everything that's been going on. And she's still here every day after school, helping with Jamal, going to family therapy with me." Her voice trailed off, and Sarah could see tears welling in her eyes. "She shouldn't have to do all this," Letitia whispered. "She's just a kid. She should be worried about prom and college applications, not taking care of her addict mother and premature brother." Sarah reached out, placing a comforting hand on Letitia's arm. "Tasha is an incredibly strong young woman," she said gently. "And a lot of that strength comes from you, Letitia. Don't forget that." Letitia shook her head, doubt clouding her features. "For me? All I've done is mess up her life. If it wasn't for me, she'd be Dash. She'd be without her mother and brother," Sarah interrupted firmly. "Letitia, look at me." Reluctantly, Letitia met Sarah's gaze. "You've made mistakes," Sarah continued, her voice gentle but firm. "But you're here now. You're fighting to be better, for yourself, and for your children. That takes incredible strength and courage. And Tasha sees that. She's learning from your resilience, your determination to change. Letitia was silent for a long moment, absorbing Sarah's words. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. Do you really think I can do this? Be the mother they deserve. Sarah's answer was immediate and certain. I do. It won't be easy, and there will be setbacks along the way. But I've seen how hard you're working, how much you love your children. With continued support and your determination, I believe you can build the life you all deserve. As if sensing the emotional weight of the moment, Jamal stirred in Letitia's arms, letting out a soft coo. Both women looked down at him, their faces softening with affection. He's getting so big, Sarah remarked, gently stroking Jamal's cheek with one finger. Letitia nodded, a hint of wonder in her voice. Dr. Patel says he might be able to come home soon, maybe in another week or two, if he keeps progressing like this. The mention of home brought a new tension to Letitia's frame. I'm scared, she admitted. What if I can't handle it? What if I mess up again? Sarah leaned in, her voice low and intense. You won't be alone, Letitia. Remember, you have a whole support system in place. The home health nurses, your counselor, the social workers, they'll all be there to help. And you have Tasha and me. We believe in you. Letitia took a deep breath, seeming to draw strength from Sarah's words. Thank you, she said softly, for everything. I don't know where we'd be without you. Sarah smiled, squeezing Letitia's arm gently. You're doing the hard work, Letitia. I'm just here to cheer you on. As they sat together, watching Jamal drift off to sleep, Sarah found herself reflecting on the journey this family had undertaken. From the desperate moment when Tasha had stumbled into the fire station with her newborn brother, to this quiet afternoon in the NICU, so much had changed, and yet the core of love and determination that bound this family together had only grown stronger. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. Jamal continued to thrive, reaching milestone after milestone. The day Dr. Patel announced he was ready to go home was filled with a mixture of joy and trepidation. Sarah watched as Letitia and Tasha carefully secured Jamal in his car seat, triple-checking every strap and buckle. Remember, Dr. Patel said, her voice gentle but firm, the home health nurse will be checking in daily for the first week. If you have any concerns, any worries at all, don't hesitate to call. Letitia nodded, her face a mask of nervous determination. We've got this, she said, as much to herself as to anyone else. Right, Tasha? Tasha, her arms full of discharge papers and care instructions, nodded firmly. We got this, Mom. As they left the hospital, Sarah couldn't help but marvel at the transformation she'd witnessed. Letitia, once trapped in a cycle of addiction and fear, now stood tall, her eyes clear and focused on the future. Tasha, no longer bowed under the weight of secrets, moved with a confidence beyond her years. The transition home wasn't without its challenges. Sarah found herself making frequent visits to the Williams' small apartment, offering support and encouragement as they adjusted to their new reality. There were nights when Letitia called, her voice tight with anxiety, convinced she couldn't handle the responsibility. Sarah talked her through those moments, reminding her of how far she'd come, of the strength she possessed. There were days when Tasha seemed overwhelmed, torn between her schoolwork, her family responsibilities, and her own dreams for the future. Sarah made sure to carve out time just for Tasha, taking her on college visits, helping her research scholarship opportunities, reminding her that her own goals were just as important as her family obligations. And through it all, little Jamal continued to grow and thrive. His first real smile, his first attempts at rolling over. Each milestone was celebrated as a family victory, a testament to their collective strength and resilience. 6 months after that fateful morning at the fire station, Sarah stood in the small community center, watching with pride as Letitia accepted her 6-month sobriety chip. Tasha sat in the front row, Jamal bouncing on her lap, both of them beaming with pride. As Letitia made her way back to her seat, her eyes met Sarah's. The gratitude and affection in that gaze spoke volumes. Sarah nodded, offering a smile and a thumbs up. Later, As they gathered for a small celebration, Letitia pulled Sarah aside. "I've been thinking," she said, her voice quiet but steady, "about what you said that day in the hospital, about Tasha learning from my resilience." Sarah nodded, encouraging her to continue. "I want to do more," Letitia said, a spark of determination in her eyes. "I've been talking to my counselor about training to become a peer support specialist, to help other moms who are struggling with addiction, who feel like they can't find a way out." Pride swelled in Sarah's chest. "Letitia, that's wonderful," she said warmly. "You have so much to offer, so much wisdom to share from your experiences." Letitia smiled, a hint of her old uncertainty creeping into her expression. "Do you really think I could do it?" "I know you can," Sarah said firmly. "You've already come so far. Think of how many lives you could touch, how many families you could help keep together." As they rejoined the others, Sarah watched as Letitia scooped Jamal into her arms, planting a kiss on his chubby cheek. Tasha leaned against her mother's side, a textbook balanced on her lap. Studying for her upcoming SATs, Sarah knew. The scene before her was far from perfect. There would be more challenges ahead, more obstacles to overcome. But as Sarah looked at this small family, Letitia, standing tall and proud in her recovery, Tasha, balancing on the cusp of adulthood with grace and determination, and little Jamal, healthy and thriving against all odds, she felt a profound sense of hope. This was a family reborn, forged in the fires of adversity and tempered by love, determination, and the support of their community. As Sarah prepared to leave, Tasha caught her eye, mouthing a silent thank you over her mother's shoulder. Sarah smiled and nodded, her heart full. She had set out to help a family in crisis, but in the end, she realized this remarkable family had taught her just as much about resilience, love, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. As she stepped out into the warm evening air, Sarah felt a renewed sense of purpose. There would be other families in need, other crises to face. But the story of the Williams family would stay with her always, a testament to the power of compassion, second chances, and the unbreakable bonds of family love. If Tasha's story inspired you, be sure to subscribe for more uplifting and heartfelt narratives. And before you go, we'd love to hear from you. How do you think you would have reacted if you were in Tasha's position? Share your thoughts in the comments below.